Hi everyone, and welcome to this roundup of round one of the local 40k league I've entered into. For those of you who haven't seen my army, you can go and check out this video which tells you all about the league and the army that I'm taking. But now, on with the show. So, this is a game for my successor Salamanders against successor Space Wolves. And I've played this particular opponent a couple of times before with different iterations of the army. And to be honest, I've always been absolutely walloped. Normally the game's been over by turn 2 with my army disintegrating in the face of long bomb charges. So I knew that I had my work cut out in this particular matchup. Not necessarily the best way to start the league. Rolling for mission, we came up with Abandoned Sanctuary, and this absolutely did not play into my hands at all. The lack of being able to forward deploy meant my scouts weren't going to be able to do their job, and having the objectives planted up in the middle of the board on the halfway line for all the ones in no man's land means that realistically I wasn't going to get anything out of Promethean Creed as a secondary. I was also quite concerned around the change made to Codex Warfare, which has had an impact on me as my army was written and submitted before the latest data change, meaning I was expecting to do a lot of work through Codex Warfare and hadn't fully decided on what I was going to do in its place. So for this particular game, I decided that tactically, I wasn't going to be able to stop the Space Wolves rushing for the centre of the board and taking a lot of the objectives. And if I did that, I would lose most of my army to melee really, really quickly. I still needed to shoot things a lot and to really whittle down his numbers so that I could mount some kind of counterattack later into the game. So with this in mind, I took no prisoners and shock tactics. The view of I was going to cede control of the centre of the board, but I'll have to try and take it back for turn 4 and 5 to gain some decent amount of victory points through the primary. For my final secondary, I wasn't really sure what I was thinking with this one, but I took Rod. I think really it was around, I thought I'd probably get something out of it, but it wasn't a great choice, and combined with some tactical boo-boos meant I didn't actually end up scoring anything for this particular secondary. So all in all, not a great pick there. Space Wolves took pride, banners, and engage on all fronts. So I got first turn, which again I wasn't particularly enamoured by. I was hoping to go second so that the Wolves would at least come out of cover before I had my first round of shooting. So it was all quite tentative. I moved a couple of bits forward, threw a couple of spells about, but I did have some success in that I could see his las cannon equipped Longfangs, which were the single biggest threat to my Land Raider on the board. Perhaps should note that the Space Wolf army consisted mostly of combat infantry, so there was 3 units of Wolfen, a couple of units or 3 units of Skyclaws. There were 2 units of Longfangs, one exclusive with multi-melters, one with las cannons. The multi-melters, 1 unit of Wolfen and 1 unit of the Skyclaws all started off the board. Also, there was some Thunder Wolf cavalry. So yeah, I got rid of the las cannon armed Longfangs, which I felt gave my Land Raider Redeemer a little bit more of an ability to operate without being blasted off the table really quickly. So that was quite useful. In the Space Wolf turn 1, unfortunately, my opponent was able to get a couple of charges off. A unit of 6 intercessors was wiped out on my right flank, and I also lost an attack bike to a charge by Thunder Wolf cavalry on the left. I had hoped that there wouldn't be any turn 1 charges getting in, but misjudged that slightly. So that's partly on good dice rolling for a long bomb charge, but also I'm, despite having played them several times, misjudged the capabilities of the Thunderwolf cavalry. So definitely a lesson for the future there. Turn 2 saw the Skyclaws that had attacked me on the right-hand flank take a truly heroic amount of damage. A truly heroic amount of gunfire, and then get wiped out. In the centre, the Wolfen hadn't really pushed, so I nipped in to grab a couple of easy victory points and secure the centre of the table. Fighting on the left flank continued between Thunderwolves and attack bike and one of my dreadnoughts, losing an attack bike, but the dreadnought held firm. In the Space Wolf, turn 2, reinforcements started to arrive, and I started to take serious losses as the charges came in, and once again my army started to crumble in the face of the attacks. The main difference being from previous games against this opponent that whilst my army was crumbling, I had enough left to see a turn 3, so already doing slightly better length of game wise than I had done previously, and also felt I'd shot a lot more of his stuff off than in previous games. Turn 3 and turn 4 didn't see an awful lot of action. I was at this point just going for as many kills as I could to score on no prisoners, whilst the Space Wolves were mopping up my army. A shout out should go out at this point to the power of the Land Raider Redeemer that obliterated a unit of Wolfen, and then when charged by 2 characters, killed one of them in Overwatch before driving over the other one in a shared death melee action. So yeah, pretty happy with how that model did, despite the fact it's quite expensive and you never see them. So how did things end up? Well, on the scores, it was very, very one-sided. So the Space Wolves scoring 94 points across their various objectives, dropping just 6 points, and I came in with a score of 39. On reflection, I did do myself out of 4 points. I completely forgot. At one point, I did retake the centre very briefly, which should have scored me 4 points of shock tactics, but my bad for failing to remember that at some points. So I would have ended up with 43 points. Will it matter for the league overall? Who knows? It didn't matter at all for this game. I was well beaten. And with some definite lessons to learn for next time, really. Those lessons are, I need to think more carefully about that third secondary. It's something I always struggle with, and I need to keep track of how I'm scoring points and what I need to do. From taking shock tactics, for example, I need to remember that I've got it and to score the points appropriately. Now, while my army doesn't really have much in the way of killing power for assault and rapid fire weapons, or certainly not for assault weapons, I think it's probably worth revisiting Codex Warfare as a concept, particularly if there's games where I'm looking at them going, I just need to kill stuff. And if I'm putting all my eggs in those sort of baskets, then I might as well pick up whatever points I can as part of the process. I also perhaps need to think about just being a little bit more tentative with my movement and not giving even a sniff of long bomb charges, because even when my opponent relies on 9s and 10s, it's amazing how often these sort of charges seem to come off, particularly if you've got an opponent with rerolls to their charges floating around beyond just the usual CP. So something to think about there. If I'm going to be defensive, be properly defensive. Still, it's early days yet, and on to the next one. Not sure who my round 2 opponent will be yet, but we'll see how we get on. If you enjoyed listening to the report of how I've been getting on in this league, do consider dropping a like and subscribe. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. This is Return to the Old World. Have a great day.